stand over here. And for those that I just turned on to here, let me make sure it's on.
Are we live now?
You will be in a second. Yes, we are. All right, so we are live. And before you get into your monologue, I'm borrowing time. You will see that over here, and I'm over here, there's a couple of seats. They're coming from having dinner, got served late. We have two authors that come from out of town, but they did arrive in town. They just have to make their way here. So I'm going to take the opportunity for those that are listening on Facebook Live and those people that happen to be here right now, just to give a couple of tidbits, not taking any thunder from you, just shorten you up a little bit. First of all, for those that don't know about Hometown Novel Nights, please go to Hometown Novel Nights on Facebook. We have our own page which talks about all the events, and you get to meet and talk with an awful lot of local authors who have Georgia roots, who grace us on a regular basis through different events like this every month. And we're very thankful to the Carnegie Library for everything it does to help support and sponsor our programs. And it's great to be live again. And I'm talking long enough that one of our authors is about to come up front. She just walked in. Miss Estelle Ford Williamson is here, all the way from Beaufort, South Carolina. So she's here. She has got a nice full belly after she got her sandwich done. Come on up here. We're going to put you in the hot seat. And I'm sure Marlene's right behind with her husband. So what I'd like to share with you at the moment, I want to give a heads up to somebody who has been extremely, and that's why you got plenty of room here. And I'm going to give a lot of credit to Miss Jenny Jones of Corner Arts Gallery and Studios here on Court Square in downtown Newnan. It's been now about 12 years since Scott's Books closed down in 2009, if I did my math right. And when the downtown lost Scott's Books, we lost a key cog in the wheel for downtown, because independent bookstores are the lifeblood for a lot of commercial districts like downtown Newnan. To slowly been building back up, Miss Jenny Jones has been allowing us in her shop, which she's got fantastic local artisans of all shapes, forms, and kinds in her store. She has been graciously allowing us to slowly grow what now is, I would term as a pop-up bookshop. It is slowly growing now, where we now have 100 titles of local authors that have been gracing Hometown Novel Nights, and others who we've uncovered in the local area who have brought their books and put it on the shelves at Corner Arts Gallery. If you have not been there and you're from the Coweta County area, I highly encourage you to do so, and you'll have a couple of opportunities. Tomorrow night, for those that will be at the Fall Art Walk here in downtown Newnan, please stop in and take a look at Corner Arts Gallery. It is just across the street, basically, from the Carnegie Library, right next door to the old Scott's Bookstore. And I think you'll be quite surprised to see what's inside, not to mention all the books that will be there. And we would look forward for that. I would also shout out to the Hometown Novel Night program. We've started a writers program. And the writers program is HNN Writers Group, and it allows us to meet and critique one another in a virtual setting and also a live setting once a month. Matter of fact, this Saturday at 11 o'clock, I encourage any of the writers to come on down to Corner Arts Gallery. We get the back studio. I bring donuts for those that like to engage and indulge in those. And this particular month, we're going to be talking about genres. There's a lot of misunderstanding on genres, and it's something we want to talk about. So with that, I think I'm taking about as much time as I think I have to, because we have Estelle to get us kicked off. I know Miss Marlene Buchanan and her husband will be up here shortly. So with that, Scott, the host with the most, the funnier man than me, and my fellow Florida Gator.
Gator. Anthony left it out, but 3:30 Saturday in the Swamp, Alabama takes on Florida. You know, okay, Hometown Novel Nights, we've got a busy fall coming up in October. It's going to be virtual this time. It's going to be on October the 21st. Mysteries and Thrillers. Sharon Marchicello with us tonight now is going to be the moderator. Our guests will be Dana Reisenauer, Linda Sands, and Deborah Goldstein. And then in November, we'll be back here in the Carnegie on the 18th. Our guests will be Jed Boone Smith, Janet Chapman, and Angela Durden. And in December, I think we've got a special event. Mike, do you want to talk about that just for a minute?
Yeah, for all of the Hometown Novel Night authors, we invite, and to all of those that are here tonight, if you would like to come back, we'd love to have you still. We're having a Christmas party for our Hometown Novel Night program, where the authors and their spouses or others, however you want to term that, bring a guest. We have been invited to have a special Christmas gala at Warm Springs Cellars. Ms. Sonia Adams, the proprietor of Warm Springs Cellars, has graciously worked with us to provide a very affordable Christmas party for all of us. So we could, this will be a white elephant book swap opportunity, which will be a lot of fun with authors. And we're also going to have a dinner that night, and we've got live music planned. And so Warm Springs Cellars, if you have not been to Warm Springs anytime soon, recently, I would recommend the trip. And when you are in downtown Warm Springs, stop into Warm Springs Cellars. It is a wonderful venue with craft beers and wines that are fabulous. And the setting in the back of the building is got Houdini's elephant and all kinds of stuff, which bothers me because I got Alabama to deal with this weekend. So, but that would be Thursday the 16th, I think it is, in December. Y'all look on Hometown Novel Nights to get all the information. I'll be sending out specifics. I'm getting too old to remember all my dates all the time. But it is on a Thursday night. That much I remember, Scott. So, all right.
That's why I wrote my dates down. Also, we have regular monthly workshops at the Corner Arts Gallery on the second Saturday every month from 10 to 11:30 in the morning. And we have a writers group community that meets virtually every second Monday at 6:30 to 8 o'clock at night. Mike does the one at the Corner Arts, and Angie Gallion hosts the one that's virtual. So one thing, I do have a monologue tonight, is that all right?
Go for it.
One thing I really look forward to in these presentations is to find out what makes other writers write. You guys can take notes if you don't have this covered yet. What inspires them, what motivates them to write, why do they do it? And I listen really closely because it inspires me. Hearing what other people do makes me feel like writing. In my office where I write, I've got a lot of quotes from famous writers. Some of the ones that mean a lot to me. You don't write because you want to say something, you write because you have something to say. That was our stuff that's true. I wake up in the morning, my mind starts making sentences, and I have to get rid of them fast, talk them, write them down. That was Hemingway. A writer is someone for whom writing is more difficult than it is for other people. That one's really true. That's Thomas Mann. And here's one I don't know who is credited to, but I love this one. When the elderly die, a library is lost and volumes of wisdom and knowledge are gone. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I always say every person has a story, and every person, if you listen really closely, got a lot of stories. If you don't know, I wrote a weekly column for the Buchanan Herald, as does Alex, who is with us tonight. And right now it's fall, so basically my column is recapping the week in college football. So I'm not free to do the other freelance stuff like Alex is doing right now. But so I took my services elsewhere. I kind of asked a newspaper if they'd be interested in having some of my columns, and the Albany Herald said, yeah, we would. So I have a column in the Albany Herald now. I go down there to race. That's about the only thing I do in Albany, and go down there for barbecue sometimes. But they print my columns on Friday, and they let me write whatever I want. They match my salary that I get from the New York Times Herald. So actually, they tripled it. And I'll tell you about the last one, the latest column at the very end. Here's one more quote I want to go back to. And this one generated a whole book. If a writer falls in love with you, you can never die. Is that cool? So my wife got me that, and I said, that's a cool theme for a book. So I ended up writing a whole book about my life. And it was all positive and complimentary, and I think it was, 2 years ago here, I gave it to her because we had a hometown novel night on an anniversary. So, and let me go back just a minute, because my wife hates when I write about her, especially if I don't run it by her first. And I always tell her I don't run it by her because she never reads anything I write. And I mean that when I say that. I think she's on chapter 2 of the book I wrote about her. Whereas Mike's wife read it the first week, I believe. But, so opposites attract, I know that. But Cindy and I have a lot in common. We went to the same high school, we're high school sweethearts, we went to college together. We're both Florida Gators. We like spending time in small towns. We love listening to live music. We like being grandparents, and college footballs on Saturday and fall is a religious event. That's about the end of the similarities. Everything else were totally different. One other thing we had in common, this is kind of a cool story. Both of us went to our first concert to see Jimi Hendrix. Is that neat? Okay, I was in Hawaii, my dad was stationed in the Navy over in Honolulu, so I saw him there at the Waikiki Shell. Meanwhile, 5,000 miles away, Cindy went to see him in Jacksonville, opening for the Monkees. Opening for the Monkees. And if you read the history behind that concert, Jimmy opened up, and nobody wanted to hear Jimmy, they wanted to see Davy Jones. So while he was playing Foxy Lady, the crowd was chanting, "Foxy Davy." So Hendrix got sick of it and walked off the stage. Cindy has no recollection of Hendrix, him walking off the stage or anything. All she can remember is Davy Jones singing "Daydream Believer." But I thought that was a cool story. Okay, that's the end of the similarities. We live in the same house. Okay, that too. Cindy can always be counted on for a source for a column. So I've taken liberties over the course of time to write columns about her. Some she's read about later, some she hasn't seen yet. So eventually, I guess she'll get around to seeing them at some point in the future. One thing about Cindy, she has no concept of time. She's late for everything. She was late the night we had that thing that I told you about with her book. Cindy thinks if we have a 9:15 flight, if we leave at 8 o'clock, we'll be fine. And we live 40 miles from the airport. That's the kind of concept she has for time. 2 stories about time with Cindy. These are really good stories. I'm a runner, so before I retired, I'd get up every morning at 2:51. I got to a CP as well. Every morning I'd get up at 2:51 to run. So one morning I came down at 3 o'clock, was getting my coffee, getting my shoes on to go run. And Cindy was on the couch because she'd worked all night the night before. And she goes, "What are you doing up?" I said, "I'm going to run." She goes, and this is a trick. She said, "How long have you been doing that?" "Since when have you been doing that?" I said, "Since 1982. This was 2007 or 8. Another one, this is one of my favorites. We went to a basketball game. Florida was playing in Auburn. So I told her what time we had to leave, giving her about 30-minute grace for being late, which she was. So we got there, we pulled into the Coliseum. And I said, "We got about an hour and 10 minutes left so you can get something to eat." She goes, "We only got 10 minutes left." I said, "No, Alabama's on Central Time Zone." And she goes, "How long did you know that?" I said, "Since 3rd grade." She didn't think that was funny. Another thing about Cindy, she's got a lot of irrational fears. She's afraid of lizards and frogs. I found that on our first date when I took her, second date. Took her miniature golfing, and there was a big old bullfrog in Jacksonville Beach that I picked up and chased her with it. And that was almost our last date. She's afraid of lizards, the kind where she screams bloody murder, runs in the house and locks the door until it's gone. She's afraid of werewolves. This is a really good story. She had a friend whose daughter worked for some marketing company that did a lot of promotions for movies. So we got invited to the premiere of Van Helsing. Do you remember that movie?
Yes.
Hugh Jackman, I think, with all the monsters. So in the lobby, they had all the real life monsters. They looked real, like Frankenstein and the Mummy and all that. And I noticed out of the corner of my eye, I saw a wolf man. And that's one of her biggest fears. So she didn't see him yet. So I said, "Let's go get our seat." So I went down and got our seat. And I said, "I'm going to get some popcorn." So I went back out in the lobby and I talked to the wolf man. And I asked him I told him where we was at. I said, "Come down the aisle. I'll distract Cindy. She'll be talking to me. You sit down next to her while I'm talking to her." And it worked like a charm. And I've got about 2,000 people that will attest to that. So I'm sitting there talking to her, she's looking at me, and the wolf man's coming down and sits down next to her. And the movie's about to start, and the lights go down, and she looks straight ahead. She looked over like that. She's sitting next to the wolf man. Is that cool? This goes over better with beer. And the last story, her last biggest fear is getting a piece of fat in her mouth. And this is a segue into getting you to go home tonight and look up the Albany Herald and click on the link that says "Chewing the Fat," because it's a column about her fear of fat. And it made for a great story. So I think it's the best one I've done for her. They might triple my salary at the Times Herald. I mean, at the Albany Herald. So anyway, I'm getting older now. I'm trying to leave as much behind as I can, write all those volumes that the older people leave behind. and that's one of the reasons I love to write. I always say that once I'm gone, it'll be like I'm still here. So, now we're all here, right?
We are all here.
So, our first speaker tonight is Estelle Ford Williamson, and she began a professional writing career in Atlanta, where she was a reporter for United Press International, then was a corporate trainer and a college writing lab instructor. She published a historical fiction novel, Abbeville Farewell, a novel of early Atlanta and North Georgia, and co-wrote with Majok Marier, Seed of South Sudan, memoir of a lost boy refugee. In January of this year, she published a second novel, Rising Fawn, set in Atlanta and Lookout Mountain, which Cassandra King praised for its rich, detailed, poetic imagery and fast-paced narrative. An excerpt was selected as the finalist for the Short Story America Prize in 2017. Along with Abbeville Farewell, it was selected for top novel honors at Sand Hills Writers Conference in Augusta. She has twice been a resident fellow of the Cambridge Center in Raven Gap, Georgia, and was a writer in residence at the Decatur Library. She has performed writing workshops for the Pat Conroy Literary Center, for Poets and Writers, Inc., and for the Lou Walker Senior Center in DeKalb County, Georgia. She and her husband recently moved to be near the grandchildren and live in a coastal river near Beaufort, South Carolina. Estelle, all yours.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
And don't be bashful, speak up.
I will speak up. So
You got fans, by the way, from South Carolina watching.
Oh, that's right. We're on Facebook.
That's right.
Hey, hello out there and here. So glad to be here. I am just delighted and I'm overwhelmed by what you all do, the hometown novel group, the hometown novel nights, and your hometown writing group. I've been hearing names of people all evening. Susan Crawford, hi Susan, if you're out there. A lot of other people that she and I were in a critique group together when this book first started. It started a long time ago. It was interrupted kind of by the story of the lost boy of Sudan, which then branched into, let's start a nonprofit so we can build water wells in Sudan, so we're South Sudan. So I got back to the book just in time for the pandemic. But it's kind of a story that's like our lives in the pandemic. Everything shifts all of a sudden in this woman's life. She's a professional life coach in Atlanta, lives in the northern suburbs. You know, one of those houses that looks like it's out of Southern Living, the demonstration house for Southern Living. Got a nice life. All of a sudden, her credit card information is stolen and somebody's racking up thousands in charged in cash advances in California in her name. Her husband's been doing some things that are a little suspicious. He's got somebody on the side, not sure. They've been married 5 years. You know, things are not all that great. And then someone takes out a home equity line in their name, $200,000. And they're on the hook for it. So he kicks her out of the house, right? Logical thing to do. And she leaves wherever she can. It just so happens that her mysterious mother, who's in a nursing home, has some property on the Alabama side of Lookout Mountain. So where does she go? She goes up to Lookout Mountain, fleeing Atlanta, looking for a way to get back because she loves him, but you know, he doesn't want her, you know, what are you going to do? So Claire is, she's in a tight spot, as they say in Old Brother out there. She's also a little bit manic. Her girlfriend says, is there any bipolar in your family? And she's, oh, I don't know. Anyway, long story short, her family, like a lot of families, is odd. So she starts getting into family background. She gets up in Lookout Mountain. But on the way, she meets these characters, and this is what I loved about writing Rising Fawn. Rising Fawn is the name of the settlement that is on top of the mountain and in the valley between Lookout Mountain and Sand Mountain. And so it encompasses Cloudland Canyon State Park, which some of you may know, and it also encompasses the former iron-producing and coal-producing area in between the mountains and on top of the mountains. So she goes looking for a way to get to this place in Lookout Mountain, and she, in the process, starts finding some interesting people. Hold on just a minute, let me find my bullets. So I got to write about some interesting people. Through a heavy coating of mist on her window, she made out gas pumps and a store, actually a small frame house converted to a store on the right side of the road. She decided to pull in and adjust her heating and defrost buttons so she could clear the car windows. She nudged the car into the gravel parking lot, avoiding the 2 gas pumps, and pulled in as straight as she could to avoid the other cars parked like second and third lots near the station's door. Immediately, she wished her car was not bright yellow. "What the hell," she said to the fog-bound car. "Might as well go in and wait out the rain." She pushed open a glass door almost solid with poster ads for ammo, a rodeo, and a church bake sale, among others. As the door opened, she heard a clear bell above the door jangling excitedly. Inside, she felt warmth and hugged her chilled body. "Come in, dearie, it's visible outside." A low, hoarse voice hailed her as she stood, wondering where to go next. Beyond displays of crackers, cookies, and paper diapers heaped at the front of the store, she saw a counter to the right. A rough-looking, tan, blonde woman in a denim shirt leaned on a cash register behind the counter, smoking a cigarette. Sitting in front, just to Claire's right, a line of stools on which she saw the large, rounded backs of 4 men hunched over the slab. "Great day for ducks and hogs," the woman yelled cheerily. "What can I get you? Directions? Beer? Got several brands. Just name your pison." Claire brushed the rain from her sweatered arms and walked over toward the woman, carefully avoiding the men's massive backs. None of them looked at her until she'd drawn up to the counter near the woman. She felt eyes cutting toward her. "What'll it be?" the woman asked again. I just wanted to get out of the weather for a moment," Claire said. "Is this expected to go long?" "That our weather ain't going to make it over Taylor's Ridge, so you might as well just set a spell," a man nearest the storekeeper growled. "Of course, you just crossed Dick's Ridge, but you didn't know that." Taylor's, Dick's. Claire was confused. Then she realized they were all messing with her. "Yeah, ain't got to be any real estate deals going down in this kind of weather," said a man next to him, a face barely visible under his baseball cap. "Take a load off, honey." Well, those are just some of the characters she's running into. These men turn out to be fairly not a problem after all, but in the process, she gets her ears full and her eyes full of the kind of suspicion there is of people like herself. They all think she's there for real estate. She's just trying to find a home. And she ends up confiding in Cheryl, who turns out is a kind of in between whether she's going to be a guy or a girl. So there's a little bit of all kinds of people in this book. In the book, she's basically coming to terms with that very mysterious background. There are Irish and Italian immigrants that she came from the 1870s. They came there in the 1870s to dig coal. And the mysteriousness of their lives is intertwined with her mother and all the mystery about her. And she's a mother that, she's not really a mother. She's kind of abandoned Claire, and the whole story is about Claire's getting a sense of herself, given that she's lost her home, she has no family, and Willie, Clem is his name, her husband, has just kind of left her out high and dry. So it's what they would call, I like to think it's literary fiction, because it's about characters and what happens with characters. It might be categorized as domestic suspense, but there's some mystery in it too. I'm not a mystery writer like some people are here, but there's mystery in it too. How is she going to get out of this? And there's a good deal of information about what life is like for people who are life coaches and what happens when their lives go south. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Sounds great. Does anyone have any questions?
Estelle, what's your academic background?
I was a journalist, interested in writing. I wanted to be like Ernest Hemingway, so I focused on journalism, or thought journalism was going to be the way. I went to a college, I had a full scholarship to St. Mary's College at Notre Dame. I was really fortunate. It was a working scholarship, so I worked in the dining hall, and it had a very high-priced, in terms of the value of what I did. Got a full scholarship. And then I took courses in journalism at night as I worked in Chicago. Those were my electives that went toward my degree. So I was kind of putting together, but my major was actually humanistic studies. They didn't have a writing major, they had a minor. But I learned it mostly from writing for journalists. And then when I came to Atlanta, I worked for UPI. So most of my writing skill in terms of, I spent about 10 years researching Abbeville Farewell, a novel of early Atlanta, North Georgia. And that was 10 years, but 8 years of that was learning how to write fiction. I took workshops with every person I could find. I'd gone to the Hamage Center, and somebody said, you ought to be reading poets and writers. So poets and writers, okay. Somebody's having a workshop over at Presbyterian College, and George Garrett, who was a preeminent historical fiction writer, was going to be one of the writers, and the other one was Mary Oliver, and the third one was Richard Bausch. And this was like a grant they had for 2 years, but those are the kinds of people that were there. So I went, Richard Bausch is the world's best short story writer and knows cryptic dialogue. You know, none of this he said, she said stuff. I mean, he's very quick and teaches you a lot about character. So basically, I learned anywhere anybody was running a workshop. Lena Williams, who was a wonderful short story writer at Emory, told me when I called her one time, I didn't know her, she would know me, but she says, I want to do a workshop with adults. I'm teaching people at Emory, but I'd love to be working with adults. So we had fiction writing workshops with her. So just anywhere I could learn. Rosemary Danielle, she's one of the people that wrote in praise of my book. I would take her Zona Rosa courses. So if you were a writer and you had good credentials, my first one through the Village Writers Group, we had somebody who was a critique group leader, and she refused to let me use the word refugee as a verb. There is no such thing verb as refugee. Well, a lot of my relatives are refugee all over Georgia. So you're from Boston, what do you know? Sort of thing. So after that experience, I decided I would, any workshop I was going to, somebody had to be credentialed, in the sense of, so I was hanging around with, if they were at the Associate Writer Program in Atlanta, a lot of people who are heads of creative writing programs at North Carolina and other places, I'd carry their bags. I'd take them to the airport, and get to know their agents, or get their agent's name didn't help all that much for my book, but just any tips they could give me. So I'm still doing that. I recommend it. I'm sure you all are doing the same. You read somebody else's work, and if you could be fortunate, you go to a workshop. So somebody might say, well, how did you get Cassandra King to blurb your book? Well, I spent a year getting blurbs. I'll be honest. Her husband was Pat Conroy, and he died the year I moved to South Carolina. And I knew him before, or had acquainted with him a little bit. My sister-in-law was good friends with him in high school. So I just did everything I could. It was a work of pleasure. As the center there started up, I just volunteered wherever I could, helped out, do a lot of front work, whatever people needed. And through that, I got to know Cassandra, and she wrote a book called Tell Me a Story. It's about her life with Pat Conroy. I highly recommend it. It's great for writers. And you get to know, I got to finally put together all his wives and children, who's who. But it's a very tender story, and how generous he was with other writers. I didn't get to experience that. I would see him in Atlanta. He was on a stage, I didn't get to experience that. But he did that with so many people. And she talked about how he did that and how generous he was and how he was that way with her as when he first met her as a writer. And I thought, I wonder if she would blurb my book. So I sent her an email through her Facebook. Not an email, but a message. And I was probably in the fall. And New Year's night, I was walking on the beach. It was really dark at Hunting Island with people who were celebrating there. They always celebrate by going overnight there and spending, camping and all. I was trying to find my way around. It was hard in the dark. All of a sudden, there was this text. And she said, I'd be glad to blurb your book. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. It's not so easy, though, even if you're doing this, it's not easy. I see you're shaking your head, Chris, and maybe
I'm agreeing with you.
You can have some stories on that.
I do.
I had to stay on her a little bit because she would lose it. She would go from one place to another. She was in Beaufort, and then she'd spend a lot of time in Highlands, and, you know, she'd say, I've forgotten, I'm sorry. You know, I don't know where I put the book, or something like that. So I didn't really press it, because I didn't want to be the one to be, people say, you just really hounded her until it happened, you know. But just, I was, out of courtesy, I would say, well, I think, you know, or I'd ask the editor who was waiting for it, you know, would you kind of, maybe you could send an email, but it all happened. It all happened. It just took a while. So that's why I say it took me a year. And others were, you know, just very willing, and it was just personal relationships, going to the readings, buying a lot of their books, and just establishing a relationship. I'd heard that was true for finding out agents' names, you know, carry their baggage at AWP or whatever. And it's true. You know, the closer you get to someone and they see you as a person rather than, you know, just somebody in a line, it's helpful. Chris, maybe you could share that.
No, just the trying to get one thing. When I first published, I wanted to write Snows 13. I'll do my bit later, but I wanted to write Snows 13. I don't know if you can tell by looking at me, but 13 was a while ago. My first book came out when I was 47, and so when I was selling, you know, I had a publisher, and so I said, so how do y'all get blurbs? Because I know you need them, supposedly. And they're like, actually, you get them. I'm like, what do you mean, me? I don't. So I had to contact, you know, hi, I follow you on Goodreads. I read your book. Would you please read mine? And if you like it, say something nice about it. Every single person I asked in my first book said yes, except for one, a former professor of mine. And she said no because she said, I'm swamped. I would say yes, and your book will sit in a stack in my nightstand, and I won't get to it, and I'll be disappointed. You'll be disappointed. And I said, you know what? Fair play. I really appreciate that. You were the third person the past week that's told me about, that said something about Pat Conroy. We moved to Atlanta in 1988. We lived in Brookwood Hills. That's where he lived. And I saw him from afar, and I always wanted to go knock on his door and go, hi, I want to be a writer. I really love Prince of Tides and Lords of Discipline, and I never did. And some of my friends who are writers said, who knew Pat Conroy, said you should have, because he would have probably sat you down. He might have scared you a little bit, and then he would have grinned, and he would have told you stories. And so that's one of the regrets of my life. You have a chance to talk to an author who's not a complete dragon, do it.
I agree.
It's still, before we move on to the next, what I'd like to ask you to do, being maybe Jonathan will actually see this too, give a 30-second to 45-second, or do it in that short time, commercial about, for folks that don't know what the Pat Conroy Literary Center is all about, because it just, the new expanded version is now out there. So
It's a great place. Pat passed away in November of 2016, and that fall they had the first Pat Conroy Literary Center, the Pat Conroy Literary Festival, and they created the Pat Conroy Literary Center. It was always a rented space or donated space, and now recently they have purchased a former law firm that's a really gracious, nice place where they can spread out a lot of the artifacts of his life. He was a prolific writer, as many of you know, and but he was also very humorous and very dead on. He said, I don't want any statues. You know what birds do to statues. You know, he wanted them living. And he was always giving back to other people. He particularly gave back to people of the Gullah, people in the area. And in fact, he's buried in a Gullah cemetery. So on November 4th through the 6th, they will have the Pat Conroy Literary Festival again. And it'll be the 5th one, I believe. And it is just full of dynamic speakers. I'll be one of them. I'll be talking about characters who grow from the land they're planted in. And it's meant to be about memorable characters as well. There will be songwriters, Jennifer Daniels, who sometimes is at the Red Door Theater. It's Eddie Owens Presents in Duluth. Red Door Theater, I think it is. She'll be played in, she's an original songwriter, so she's doing a workshop on songwriting. Rosemary Danielle is going to be on poetry and releasing and dealing with trauma through poetry. Quite a number of different writers. I'm sure Cassandra will be talking. Just really good writers. They also have another one coming up next weekend. That's the book club conference. It's a book club conference, and that's the end of September. I would just go on Pat Conroy Literary Festival or Pat Conroy Literary Center, PCLC, PCLF, either of those in full name, or just put it into Google and you'll find all kinds of information. And a lot of them are online, Facebook Live.
Mhm.
And then we have open mics. Mike, you could be on it, Marlene, you could be on it. You just show up and have 3 minutes of dynamic, reading, and people might be there from Ireland, who knows, they're from all over. So it's a great place to go. There's a lot of energy there, so.
A lot of great people there. But thank you very much,
Thank you.
Estelle. Thank you for coming all the way from Beaufort, South Carolina, just to be with us.
I just call it driving up the hill. But actually, I lived here for 50 years and was very much part of Georgia life. I'm a Georgia writer. Georgia themes. This is in Georgia.
Yeah.
Rising Fawn is a large part of what I experienced growing up.
Well, came home.
And I'm just really appreciate your asking me. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Pat Conroy was real generous with writing blurbs for writers. I know that.
Cassandra talked about him having a stack of books by the door of their house. And that was all books that people had sent him to look at and read. And how he did it all, I don't know.
Did you run up for me? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
All right. Next, after nearly 35 years of teaching and counseling adolescents and their parents, Marlene Ratlidge, Buchanan, retired only to begin writing Southern humor columns for the Gwinnett Citizens online newspaper. Her Hey Y'all column appears monthly. A native of Atlanta, Marlene came to Gwinnett County to teach, and there, though he wasn't really lost, she found her husband in the snow. After turning her down 3 times, they married 364 days after their first date. James, their only child, was deprived of oxygen at birth and suffers with some minor developmental issues because of it, but he is a special gift to all who know him. With her maiden name of Ratlidge, it was only natural that her students began calling her Miss Rat. Over the years, she gained an extensive collection of mice and rats given to her from her students and friends, as well as a few in the barn that came on their own. This is how Ms. Rat Writes first developed. Marlene is a Southern humorist who enjoys a little bit of the dark side of life, which is evident in both her cozy mystery, A Place with a Past, as well as in her first book, Life is Hard, Soften It with Laughter. Marlene received the Georgia Independent Writer of the Year Award in 2020 and the Christian Women's Writers Award in 2019 for her Life is Hard, Soften It with Laughter. Marlene?
Thank you. Well, after 35 years in teaching, the statute of limitations has run out on a lot of those stories. And so I can tell a lot of things, but then a lot of things implicate me in them. So I have to be very cautious. My first book, Life is Hard, Soften It with Laughter, started out to be a collection of a lot of the little essays about the foibles of human life from my Hey Y'all column. And gradually it grew and picked up essays from different kinds of things. I mean, life is hard, and you make out of it what you can. And if you can soften it with laughter, you're a whole lot better off. My mama was 94 when she died. The week before she got sick, she cut down a tree in the front yard. And when her son wasn't doing it, she went and sharpened an axe and came back and did it. I mean, that was her. She lied about her age. I do too. Mama added 10 years. I'm thinking about adding 15 because I look damn good for 87. For 72, I'm barely holding my own. Talking about my husband, yeah, he sits right back over there and can't hear me. Hey, Snail. I can tell anything. But it is an excuse. I can pop him to get his attention. Everybody goes, oh, she's just trying to tell him something. But life is hard. I have one that can't hear and one that won't listen. So, James is 39. He informed me the other day, Mom, I'll be 40 on my next birthday. And I thought, you might not see that next birthday. I don't know. But, yeah, one of the long stories I had not intended to put in the Life is Hard book was about a period of time when I had a cat named Ramona who inhaled a botfly that ate through her frontal lobe of her brain. And her films and her history now teach everybody in the world about botflies. But I had Ramona who was sick. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And when you got knockers like this, they can take out a whole chunk and all you've got is a pocket for your cell phone. But then my mama got sick. My best friend died on January the 1st. Mama died on January the 31st. And Ramona died on April the 21st. And during all that time, I could have sat there and molded and mildewed and been real pitiful. But I'm going to tell you, you just have to laugh it off. I was lucky. Snell is a very caring and tender man. One of the nights I had fallen asleep on the couch. The hospital bed had not been delivered for Mama. Snell crawled in the bed and slept with my mama so she wouldn't fall out of the bed or get confused and fall and turn around and discombobulated. So, what are you going to do? You got to laugh at things. Yes, you get fried chicken skin from radiation. But you got a pocket. You can put keys in there. You can put your lip gloss fits in real good. And people think, oh, what is she doing over there? Well, honey, it's all innocent, but it's all right there. But, I did teach for a long time. I worked with adolescents in a crisis. And one of the things that I found was I had a huge red velvet frock with Mardi Gras beads. The boys would come in and sit down next to me and hold the frog and confess every sin they had ever committed. The girls, not so much. But the boys, they'd spill their guts in a heartbeat. But my second book is A Place for the Past. And although the town is not named, it is the community where my mother grew up back in 1918. And it's a little community called Eastman, Georgia, and Dodge County. And Eastman, Georgia, and Dodge County probably got dressed up a whole lot and dressed down a whole lot in my book. But it's about a young school teacher whose aunt, Belle, also known as Ring-a-Ding, dies and leaves Patricia the farm, the family farm. And Patricia didn't know it at the time that she moved in, but not only did she inherit Aunt Belle's two cats, Ramona and Randolph, but she inherited two long-distant family members, both dead for decades. One needed help, and one wanted to drive her away. So there's humor in that. There's a few life stories, and if you ever want to know how to take a hardwood floor, take out a fireplace, and mesh in replacement boards, it's in that book. Learned that from my daddy. I can mount a floor in no time. But those are the kinds of things that I write about. It's just things that happen to you, and you think, this is terrible. Well, it's maybe not terrible. You came out of it alive on the other side. One of the stories that I received an award for was I was driving down the road sedately at 35 miles an hour when suddenly I turned at 60 miles an hour, cut across a curbstone, somebody's yard, down into a cul-de-sac, pulled the car to a screeching stop, got out, beating myself to death and hooping and hollering, and a whoop whoop, and a little blue light comes on. And I look up, and it's a policeman coming down, young thing. You ever notice, I've reached the age where doctors, policemen, things like that, they're only 12 or 14 years old. Well, policeman comes in, gets out of the car with his hand on his gun going, ma'am, are you all right? Well, first of all, I resent like hell being called ma'am, that I'm old enough to be somebody's ma'am. But all I could say was, spider! So, you know what a wolf spider is? 50-cent piece? Well, he was sitting in my lap, and he was looking at me, and he was drooling. So I got out of the car. Where the spider went, I'm not sure, but he was about the size of a saucer. And this poor young policeman that was probably 22, 23 years old is trying to calm down this frantic fat woman who's frailing and yelling and breaking windows in the subdivision and going, give me your gun, give me your gun. Well, all I wanted to do was shoot the spider. I don't, but he had a problem with that. So, you know, and I told him, and I said, spider, well, this thing was the size of a dish plate, you know? And it was wandering around, looking back, going, you're going to have a heart attack, and I'm going to have a whole hill of cholesterol to come and eat. I showed him that spider, and he went and said, ugly words. Like I didn't know what those ugly words were. But anyway, he said a couple of ugly words and started backing up toward his car. And I'm going, shoot it, shoot it, shoot it. Well, this platter-sized spider has now moved to the other side of the street, and he's looking at us like there's something wrong with us. I tell the policeman, I thank you very much for stopping. Why didn't you shoot the damn thing? And he's going, ma'am, are you all right to get in your car and drive now? I think he's afraid that I might attack him. But anyway, we calm down, we look at each other, we start to laugh, and I think, you're a child, you just don't know. But anyway, we get in our cars and start to drive off, and I pull up next to him and I said, you know, honey, you didn't close your door. I don't know where that thing is now. And I drove off. So, you know, these are the kinds of things that happen to me. These are the kinds of things that I write. So, you know, if you find something that's going on, you might as well make it funny because it's not going to do you any good to whine and whimper and cry. We have enough of that in life, so why encourage it? So that's me.
Fantastic. That's awesome, Marlene. Well, I can say this to Marlene, and this is how Marlene ended up here tonight. It was about 3 or 4, probably about 4 months ago. I got on a Zoom thing with Barbara Barth, who we had on back in June, I think it was. But I'm listening to the conversation of the authors that are on this program, and all of a sudden, Marlene starts to talk. And I am drawn in to this conversation. And I feel like I'm sitting on the back porch of my aunt's, farmhouse, listening to these tales being spun. And I said, I got to get Marlene to come visit with us. And so I am tickled to death that you are here, and I really do. And to find out that your husband knows some of my family.
Y'all may be kin.
We could be kin. So if my dad was alive, he'd be asking a lot of questions. So we're really pleased that you're here. Tell me your background. Okay, so you were a teacher, but what was your education background?
I grew up in the city of Atlanta, and I went to West Georgia College, it was college then, and became an art teacher. I will tell you this, my husband says I drive like I think I've got a siren in a blue light. My daddy was a city of Atlanta detective. I did grow up thinking I had a siren in a blue light. And you only put the brakes on when you're 7 feet away from a stop sign. That's enough. You stop, then you go. I started teaching art at Duluth High School, and there I went to Parkview High School and taught, and was a high school counselor. When I retired from there, Central Gwinnett asked me to come and work with their high-risk students and their special needs department. So I transitioned special needs children into the real world of work, getting certificates for work, getting them into special trainings like the schools down in Roosevelt Center down in Warm Springs, thank you. And on top of it, I had COVID. Aphasia is the only brain activity I have at times. But anyway, so I did a lot of that, and I worked with the high-risk students. First child I met there was named Vincent, and he was part of a gang. And he liked me, thank God. And I thought my eyebrows were tattooed on because I don't have 3 and they're white. But I thought about taking white out and making 3 stripes in my left eyebrow so that I would be identified as part of the game. But thank God they liked me, and I got some of them out of trouble and found homes for some of them. So I was always safe over there in Lawrenceville. But my first teaching day, I wrote my name, Marlene Ratlidge, up on the chalkboard. And I wrote period 1, art 1, drawing. You know, so I was standing up there, I was so proud of myself, you know, and we couldn't wear pants back then, you know, this was way back in the dark ages. So I was standing up there in my high heels and my short skirt and my long hair, thinking I looked real cute, and this little hand goes up in the back. It says, "Is you any kin to that detective policeman Ratlidge?" "Why, yes, I am. That's my daddy. He arrested me." Well, he arrested 12 of the students in my first period of class. I never had a minute's problem in that school. Uniformed officers, police officers, daddy, his partner, they would walk down the hall, stick their head in the door, and say, "Patsy, give me your keys." I had a phone in my office. I just reach in and throw it. Well, the kids all got so used to seeing uniformed police officers coming in and out of my classroom that if I ever wanted anything legal or illegal, I could have had it. So it was an interesting beginning to my career, but it was a wonderful career. And there are parts of it, if I could go back and do again, I would. There are other parts I wouldn't go back if you gave me $3 million and eternal life. So, you know, you just have to deal with what you have. But I have trouble recommending somebody going into education now. But back in the 70s when I went in, it was a great thing. So,
Marlene, do you ever write about Snell?
oh yeah, there's several stories about Snell in Life is Hard.
Yeah.
You know, like I say, on our first date we came in and he kissed me goodnight, and I thought, I'll just marry him. Well, he's 11 years older than I am, not quite 10 and a half years older than I am. The first time I met him, we were at a center learning about a new testing procedure, which is now an old testing procedure. But anyway, we were learning about the Iowa State test. And there I was. I had on a short skirt. I had on high heels. I had on hair that was longer than the skirt. And I thought I was cute. I mean, back then I had an innie for a waist. It's a long time ago. Anyway, and he comes up, and I'm introduced to him by one of the other people there. And he says, "Nice to meet you," and walks right on in. And I think, well, I made an impression. So about 3 years later, we're giving another set of tests, the Governor's Honors Program test. And y'all, I know I have no accent because I'm from here. And when you're from here, you have no accent. Now, you people that come from, you know, somewhere else, you have an accent. They gave me the Spanish test. Have you ever heard somebody with my voice say, "Buenos dias, amigos"? So I was trying to fight that tape recorder, expletives deleted all the way up. But I was trying to fight that tape recorder, and we finally got it going because one of the students came in and fixed it. And then we went out afterwards and had a little bit of break. Snell comes walking up with all these men that he's coached with and known for years. And my opening line was, "What are you doing, Slug City, besides watch the one red light change?" I mean, was that not golden? How could the man turn me down? Well, finally, my friend worked on him because they were trying to fix him up with my best friend, Sharon, because she was a sports enthusiast. And when it comes to sports, I know that there are teams, and I know that the University of Georgia is a Bulldog and it's red and black, and I know Georgia Tech is a Yellow Jacket and it's yellow and black, and that's about it. So, you know, he comes walking down, and they fix me up with him finally for a date. He brings me home that night after we've had a really nice time. And I thought, well, good, he didn't talk sports because this date would have been over in 20 minutes. But he got home, he kissed me goodnight. I went in the house. My mother and father were older than most parents. They had gone through World War II and been married for quite some time before I was born, and I am an only child. The best thing about an only child is when your parents die, you don't fight with anybody over anything. It's just, oh, I'm so sorry you're going through that with your brothers and sisters. But anyway, we married 364 days after our first date. The first time I asked him to marry me, he turned me down flat. The second time I asked him to marry me, he was a little slower in turning me down. The third time I asked him to marry me was in June, and he said, well, I don't know, we'll see. We go to see a movie, Return of the Pink Panther. See how old I am? And we go through an estate sale at Davison's. Davison's doesn't exist anymore. And I find this ring, and I think, this is the most beautiful ring I have ever seen. It's mother of pearl and gold, and it's an antique, and it's stamped from Italy. Well, the next day he picks me up and he says, will you marry me? And I said, well, yeah. But anyway, he said, well, I said if you ever found the ring, I'd ask you to marry me. And I thought, wait a minute. I never heard that statement. I could have found the ring a long time ago. Anyway, we did. We got married. And 45 years married, 46 years minus 1 day together. And we have one child who is James. And we had been married 7 years. Sal said one day, he said, you think you could be pregnant? No. Throw up? No. Throw up. Well, maybe you ought to go see the doctor. Well, all right, throw up. We go to the doctor, and dang, I'm pregnant. I started throwing up 15 minutes after conception and continued to throw up until 15 days after the birth. So, you know, James and I went through a lot, most of it in bathrooms, leaning over a porcelain bowl. But he is beautiful. He looks like my father. Daddy was over 6'4", but James is about 6 feet. He has blue-black hair and olive skin. We would go places. Now, you got to remember, Snell was 44. I was 33 when James was born. And they said, oh, is that your grandchild? Did you adopt a baby? Well, no. But I will tell you this, now that several years have passed, I am looking for a wife. I'd like very much to have empty nest syndrome. James comes with a dowry. I'll buy you a house. You name it, I'll give it to you. But I am looking for a wife, so if anybody's got an available child there, let me know. You know, we are. I'm open for resumes, and send a video if you want, but I don't really care what you look like. But yeah. So what else can I entertain you with?
Any other questions for Marlene? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right.
That'd be easy to listen to all night.
All right, next up, we've got author Bobson Leslie. He writes fast-paced, young adolescent sports novels dripping with drama and realism. He has written for Sports Illustrated, the New York Times, and Tennis Magazine, and is a career sports journalist. Bob lives in Peachtree City with his wife Sheila, and he enjoys playing golf. Bob?
Thanks, Scott. I've been a writer all my professional life, but I was a journalist, which is a little bit different type of writing than writing novels. Journalism is an economy of words where you're trying to get things through as succinctly as possible. And when you write a novel, you're expounding on everything. So it took a little getting used to, but I finally got into this. I didn't really start writing the novels until I was well into my 50s. And it all started kind of when I was, most of my life I was doing sports writing, but I took a little break and I was teaching for a while. And the kids in 7th and 8th grade used to come up to me and say, they knew I was a sports writing background, and they said, Mr. Mosley, can you recommend a sports book for us? And there weren't a lot that I really liked that I thought were authentic and really captured what sports are about and the emotions of athletes. But aside from Friday Night Lights, which was nonfiction, I love that book, but a lot of others I didn't think were that authentic, and I felt like, you know, I'm going to go and try this, and I bet you I could write a better sports book than a lot of them out there. So I set about doing it. I had an idea because, well, I had an idea to start off with mystery because, you know, mysteries, people love mysteries, so that's a good one to start off with. And I had a couple ideas in my head. One was an updated version of Watergate from the 70s on a high school level. And so I came up with this book, Out of Bounds, which is about a high school football player who gets hurt, tears his ACL, and he's no longer with the team. He has to find something to do. Takes journalism class in school, and he learns about Watergate, and he learns about, and he's kind of enthralled then with investigative reporting. So he starts writing for the school paper, and before long he's getting these notes, anonymous notes from somebody saying, you need to investigate the football team, there's something going on. And he begins to call this person Deep Throat, as you might remember from Watergate. So what he has to figure out is, can this Deep Throat person be trusted? Is something going on with the football team, and who's involved? So what I will do is read you just a very short teaser from this. I found out early that with young adults, you really have to hook them fast because they lose their attention very quickly if the book drags on. So I'm really plot driven. My stories move fast. I thought, well, one good way is maybe just put a teaser out front, an excerpt from the book right out front, and that'll be the first thing they'll see, and they'll read it, and maybe they'll be interested in continuing the book. So I'm going to read that. And this scene is where he's finally going to meet his Deep Throat, the person who's giving him all this information, and find out who he or she is. Now this takes place in Illinois, the book, and that was because later on, actually in the book, Bob Woodward shows up in the book. He's flying into O'Hare, and he hears about this investigation and this scandal at this high school, and it made it all the way to the Chicago Tribune. It was a pretty interesting story. So anyway, he's in this scene, he's meeting his Deep Throat for the first time. I sat alone in the baseball dugout. Oh, he's meeting her actually at the old football, at the baseball field in March. I sat alone in the baseball dugout, my ears searching for a voice, no matter how distant, my eyes straining for a silhouette to emerge on the horizon. Deep Throat, my mysterious source for the entire 4-month investigation, was about to be revealed on a blustery gray March afternoon. I checked the time on my cell phone. The note said to meet at 4 p.m., and it was now 4:05. Don't blow me off. The snow on the pitcher's mound had nearly melted away, leaving a muddy mess. My story was a muddy mess too, unless I could confirm my explosive information. I had to meet my Deep Throat face to face. This wasn't some puffy high school feature I was writing. It was hard news. It could result in jail time, for God's sake. Where is he or she? Suddenly I heard footsteps, and a shadow crept forward from behind the dugout. Okay, so hopefully that gets the kids a little bit interested. I write it first person, which, you know, I always joke like I have the mind of a 16-year-old, and you really have to have that when you're writing first person, because you're telling the story from their point of view. And how they feel about things. So I also try to do books that, without knocking kids over the head with morals, with morality, I try to get some morality into the books. This book, it's about what do you do when you see your friend going down the wrong path in life? What happens? What can you? Should you step in, or should you just kind of stay apart from it? My next book, my other book, Choker, which is a basketball book, is about perseverance and having the courage to be different. It's about a kid who blows the high school championship game, state championship. Always dreamed about being in state championship, and then he gets fouled at the end, and he has to sink the shots to win or lose the championship. And he just freezes up, and he throws up an air ball, and then the next shot he throws up bangs off the rim, and they lose. And he has to put up with this for the rest of the school year. But you know, he perseveres, and some things go on in his life where he changes. And that book is for that book I chose first it was going to be a black student, an African-American protagonist. Because there was one editor that told me, I think your book would really stand out if you just didn't write a white person, just write somebody a little more multiracial. And then it kind of morphed from there into a biracial. You know, he's got a black father and a white mother. And I thought that was kind of a more intriguing character because he didn't really know where he fit in the school, suburban school. Didn't know if he fit in with the black students or the white students. And so that was the basis between that story. And my third book, I'm working on a third book right now, and it's a baseball book. So I'll cover basketball, football, and baseball. And this is set in Georgia. My first book, Out of Bounds, was set in Illinois. Choker was set in Connecticut, where I lived growing up. And this one's set in Georgia. So I'm trying to move the stories around to different states and things. But the third book, I'm much more cognizant with the makeup of schools these days to have the characters, a lot of different characters. You know, Hispanic, it should represent what society does now. You know, white students, Asian students, Hispanic, and black. So that, I think, is one of the things which, to relate to young adults now, who are in a much more multicultural world than what I grew up in. That's one of the things that I tried to do. Let's see. Like I said, I try to make them fast-moving. And I don't, you know, characters, there's subplots as well, and character development's important. But I sacrifice description in some areas to move the story along. I'm not going to sit and describe a scene or the look of the gym forever. You know, I'm trying to move it along. But anyway, I did decide to get into the books when I was in my 50s, and I didn't really know if I could do it, but both books that I have out both won national awards, and I'm very proud of them. And so that's what I'm doing. They say write about what you know. My first book was certainly what I knew. I was a newspaper person, and I was in sports and a sports writer, so it was sports and journalism. And the second one is about basketball, and the third one's about baseball, and which I feel I know pretty well too. So I'm following that, you know, tried and true formula of write about what you know. And that's about it.
What's the title of your new one?
It's going to be called The Gift. Now this is the first time I've used kind of fantasy. There's a fantasy component to this book. And I don't want to tell you too much about it, but it's about a struggling single-A player who just can't make it out of single-A. He's only 22, and he spent 3 years there. And then all of a sudden, he becomes a sensation. But things happen after that as well. So yeah, that's about halfway written now. I'm trying to get it done by Christmas. Try to write a little each day. Sometimes it's hard, but you have to take the attitude as a writer, like, just get something down. You can always go back and revise it if you don't like it. Yeah, so I'm hoping that this will probably be my last book. I don't know enough about soccer to feel like I could write.
You gotta do something.
Yeah, or ice hockey, even though I played on the ponds when I was growing up. But baseball, basketball, and football will be. I'm trying to build a brand of sports. So if people think of books for teenagers that are for boys, they'll think of sports. They'll think of my name. And I kind of got in this also because, you know, girls are the ones that read most of the books in schools, and the boys are reluctant readers. And I always thought, well, if I can give them something that I think they'll be interested in reading, maybe I could really make carve a niche here. So that's what I'm trying to do. But as always with writing the book is pretty much the easy part. The marketing of the book is the tough part. You have to get it in front of people. My books get great reviews online and they've won national awards, but you still have to get it in front of people. And so that's the biggest challenge.
Now, with Scott sitting over here, who has run 3 or 4 times around the planet,
Yeah.
track would be a good one for you. There's somebody. Yeah, and just for those that are here, Bob will be making an appearance on Market Day on October 2nd at Corner Arts Gallery. We're doing Miss Ginny Jones is sponsoring the young adult and children's books that we have, and Bob is going to be one of the authors that'll be there. So please spread the word. That'd be awesome.
Any questions for Bob at this point?
What age group?
Well-
Junior high or high school?
Well, young adult really starts from 12 to 18. But the funny thing about young adult novels is a lot of adults will buy them too. Sometimes they like to relive high school or the drama of high school, which there's plenty of drama in young adult books. I wouldn't go any younger than 12, recommend these books any younger than 12, but 12 and up, kids can certainly handle them. And I learned from being a teacher like you do that there's a lot of different reading levels for kids, so you can't say, some 12-year-olds could read like, Dostoevsky, and some would be reading Roald Dahl or something. So it's just, but 12 and up, like I said, I get a lot of adults like the books, too. And there are also books. I know you brought up something about the happy endings or so. I try to write books which end with positive things, and because there's enough sadness in the world, so I like happy endings for the books.
Right.
I think you ought to start back over and do another football book, then go to your basketball book, and then go to your baseball book. I think you ought to do another series of 3,
Yeah.
just with a different plot.
Yeah.
There's plenty of stories out there.
There are.
Yeah.
There are.
Call me, I'll tell you.
She's got it.
Just lay off the running lane. All right, thank you, Bob.
Mhm.
Christopher Swann is a novelist and high school English teacher, a graduate of Woodbury Forest School in Virginia. He earned his PhD in creative writing from Georgia State University. He has been a Townsend Prize finalist, longlisted for the Southern Book Prize, and twice been a finalist for a Georgia Author of the Year award. He lives with his wife and 2 sons in Atlanta, where he is the English department chair at Holy Innocents. He Gets the full score.
Evening, y'all. Thanks for coming out. Hey, everybody. So, this is my book, Fire in the Night. I said that earlier that I knew I wanted to write since I was 13. I actually learned that I might have some talent at storytelling when I was maybe around 11. Unfortunately, it was a story about my house getting robbed. So, we get to school on Monday, and we're all waiting for class in the cafeteria, and everyone's like, "Hey, how was your weekend?" My house got robbed. What? What happened? Like, the guy came in and stole stuff. What do you mean? Okay, my room is like in the back of the house, second floor. Yeah? And we got a swimming pool in my backyard. Yeah, what is that to the hall? I'm getting there. There's a patio at the end of the swimming pool. It's got a roof over it. That roof goes right up to the window of my bedroom. And I saw the wheels turning, and my classmates, who at this point are all staring at me, but in a way I'm not used to. They're like, "What happened then?" "You mean someone climbed?" I said, "Yeah." Climbed up the roof of that and climbed in my bedroom window. While I was sleeping in my bed. "What did you do?" Like, I didn't do anything. Strange man coming through my window. Right? I pretended I was asleep. I was trying not to pee, frankly, and I didn't, so I consider that a win. What did he do next? Well, he sat there and looked at me, and I just pretended I was asleep. And then he walked past the foot of my bed and out of my bedroom door. And I heard him going downstairs. Did you get your dad?" I'm like, "No, I was trying to remember how to breathe. No, I didn't know. By the time I thought maybe I should call for my parents, he came back up. And he had and he had this set. What do you have, like your TV?" Y'all, this is in like 1981. And I don't know if you remember what televisions were like. Right? But they were basically like small cars. Like, no, he didn't have he had like a pillowcase, right, with a really loud phone in it. he had a pillowcase, and he had like jewelry and like silverware and whatever loose cash might have been in my mom's desk. And so we came in. I'm still like pretending to be asleep, and he tried to go out the window, and that's when he got kind of stuck. "What do you mean he got stuck?" I'm like, "Well, he's kind of like Santa Claus in reverse. And he's got this thing over his back. And he's trying to climb through the window. And he can't quite sort of." And so that's when I pushed him. "You what?" I said, "I don't know. I just jumped up and I shoved him." "Oh my God, did he die?" I'm like, "No, he didn't. He fell in my pool." And his arm hit and fell. There was an ambulance came with the cops. It was really? Yeah. None of this had happened. When they said, "How was your weekend?" And I said, "Well, my house got robbed." And everybody at the table turned and looked at me. I thought, well, shoot, now what? And I thought it would be weird to be like, "Nah, I'm just kidding. I had nothing. How was your weekend?" I thought that would be strange. So no, instead I just concocted this entire story. And in my defense, which is a really lousy one, I didn't see this as lying. It was more sort of like juggling, like, okay, and everyone was like in on it. They were all excited by this, so I was just okay. And then he kind of went through the room, and then he had like a sack, and then I pushed him in the pool, and they believed all of it. And the bell rang, and we had to go to class. Like, "Glad nothing happened to you, man. It's good." And by lunchtime, people kind of forgot about it, moved on to who was dating who or whatever, and the next thing, and everything was great until I got home. So I got off the bus and I walked down the cul-de-sac to my house, and there's my mom. And she's like, "Hi, how was your day?" "I had an interesting day. I had a call from Betty Smith. Her son Matthew was in your class, and He called his mother and told her, and she called me and said she was so sorry to hear about the burglar that had, let me understand, oh, that's right, he climbed up onto our patio roof through your window, and she wanted to explain to me, she thought that my son is just so brave, and wanted to know if you'd experienced any trauma from this situation. So, Christopher, did you experience any trauma? I said, I didn't know. I learned right then there's socially appropriate times to make up stories, and there are appropriate times when it's not. This is one of the times when it's not. I find it interesting that the first time I had any kind of success at telling a story that I had completely made up off the top of my head had to do with crime. And it was a terrible story, and I thought I'm never going to do that again until I had a teacher who gave us a creative writing assignment as part of the project in the Revolutionary War. We could write a story as opposed to doing a research paper, doing a book report, and Johnny Tremaine. And I didn't want to do either of those. I said, fine, I'll make up a story. And I thought I could do this. I really like doing this. What do authors do, though? Even then, I thought, authors don't just write a book and go, well, that's it. I'm going to go hang out in Myrtle Beach now. Maybe next year I'll write another. I thought, no, what do they do? So I picked up the book. What do they do? Oh, they're teachers. All right, I'll do that. That was the extent from like 8th grade through all of high school of my, career counseling. I'm going to go be an English teacher, and I'll write the great American novel. I have not written the great American novel. I don't know if it's been written yet. Whoever it has, it was written a really long time ago. The rest of us are just playing catch up. But I realized that, first I stumbled into a career I love, teaching. That's a whole other story. Instead of just paying the rent, I found I really love doing it. But I always love writing stories where you have characters that are flawed, that want to do the right thing, but they don't always know what the right thing is, or something's keeping them from being perfect. Because no one likes perfect characters. Right? Perfect characters are boring. They have to make mistakes. This novel, this is my third. This one is set in western North Carolina in the Cashiers Highlands area, which I know fairly well as a tourist because my grandparents lived there for 50 years. They opened up the first gift shop in Cashiers, North Carolina after World War II. I don't know if you've ever been to Cashiers, but there's a whole lot of gift shops now. It's a beautiful town, a beautiful area, but they were the first. And they were from away. They were from Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So it took them a long time to be accepted by the mountain folks. But they were eventually. This is a story of Nick Anthony, who is a retired professor of medieval studies, and he is also a widower, and he is grieving the loss of his wife, who died the year before from cancer. And he is living in what was supposed to be their retirement home. And he has gotten rid of his phone. He has cut himself off from the rest of the world. He just wants to be left alone. That doesn't last very long because a sheriff's deputy shows up at the beginning of the book and tells him, he has some sad news. Your brother Jay and his wife have died in a house fire that we think was an accident. And by the way, your 16-year-old niece, Annalise, Nick wasn't even aware existed because he's been estranged from his brother for about 20 years. She's missing. Have you seen her? Guess who shows up the next day in Nick's porch? Except that she shows up with the story of her parents have been killed, and the people who did it, she knows who they are, and she thinks that they are chasing her. That is the beginning of this book. I wanted to write something of a straight-up thriller with character, Nick, that you think always one way, and you realize, oh, he's also something else. Because he's not just a retired professor of medieval studies. I also wanted to see if I could pull off writing part of the story from the point of view of a 16-year-old girl. As a high school English teacher, I'm often surrounded by 16-year-old girls who are much more mature than 16-year-old boys, or even 18-year-old boys, or even 51-year-old boys sometimes. And I also had a third character I put in there, one of the villains, military contractor named Cole, who's looking for Annalise, and realized, oh, she's got this nice older uncle. He'll be easy to take care of. Not exactly. And if you want to know more, you're going to have to buy the book. But I'll say that I said sort of jokingly, that I wanted to write since I was 13, and it took a long time. It did take a long time to get published. And it's not like I spent the entire, almost 35 years in between consciously writing and working on it. Life gets in the way. But I do have to say that it is one of the most pleasantly surreal things of my life to have a dream for that long. Because most of the time when you're 13, I'm going to be an astronaut. Or I'm going to be, I'm going to be president one day. Or I'm going to be a veterinarian or whatever. And usually those dreams, they kind of fall away. And you become something else. I got to see this happen, y'all. And the only reason I am published at all, honestly, is because I didn't have the sense to quit when I had all kinds of opportunities to. And I could have. I've got more rejection notices. I could paper a bathroom with rejection notices. I thought about doing it too. My wife said no. But that really, I could have, and I was stubborn and said, no, I'm just going to keep writing. And this is my third book. And I'm very fortunate. So that's one of my stories. I don't want to talk your ear off. I'm happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
Outstanding. Well, I'm glad you're here, Chris.
I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me back.
I've been fortunate to be called Chris a friend, and I've met his wonderful wife, Kathy. I've heard the story, though, about the robbery, though, a couple times. But no,
I'm retiring it soon. Because I'm
that'll be a requirement in the future when you get to book 4.
Yeah.
We'll have to come up with a new one.
Oh, I have all kinds.
I know you do. So, but for you to be in a classroom like you are every day through most of the year, you have a teacher schedule, but how do you find time to fit in your writing? When is your writing zone?
Sleep's overrated. No, I'm fortunate enough to work in a private school where I've taught there for a long time, and I'm teaching classes that I've taught before, mostly. This year I am. And so my prep time isn't huge outside of class. And I don't have, as a private school, I don't have a lot of extra duties like you do in public schools, and in some private schools too. And so, and they're very generous and supportive of me in my career, in this second career. And it doesn't hurt them also to be like, hey, we have this teacher who also writes books. And so usually I get a lot of stuff done in the summer. I don't have any duties in the summer, and that's when it's sort of like sprinting. Like I get a whole chunk done, and then I hit September, and it slows way down, but I've got a whole lot to build on. And evenings. My wife texted me right before I got here and said, you're going to write tonight when you get home? Because I'm on deadline for my next book. I'm like, yes. Yes, honey, I'm going to write. It might be 5 words, but I'm going to write something.
Very good. So you got book 4 working.
Book 4 is in the works. Yes.
Gosh, it's nice to be young.
So. I've been called young in 20 years.
Any other questions for any of our panel tonight? They're going to hang around for a little bit if you'd like to ask them and talk privately. Their books are for sale in the back. Jenny's manning the booth for us there, so if you'd like to support our local writers, read local, please. And I think they did good. Remember I said what inspires, what motivates, why they do it? I think you guys did a great job. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Appreciate it.
Pat Conroy's book, My Losing Season, that's
Oh,
what
yeah.
book over at
Cool book. It is one of the most
for you, I am not married to Snell, so do not put this on my Facebook page because you won't let me in when I get home. All right, thank y'all for showing up.
Their books are back there if you'd like to get it. Miss Jenny's been patiently waiting back there.
Thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate your time. Don't forget to check out Hometown Novel Nights and the Newton Carnegie Library on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to check out our amazing authors at their social media platforms, whatever they may be.
My name.
Yeah, just ask them. Ask them personally. They're still here.
Bookmarks back there with my website on it. And as much as more.
I will make an announcement, if any of you, and especially all of you up here, are interested in learning more about writing, both the business end and the grammatical errors and corrections and things, there is an organization called scribblersweb.com. It's free. It has Zoom meetings. We also meet in person. But if you want to put your books in the bookstore, you get 90% of the sale. So, and we meet once a month and go to scribblersweb.com online and sign up and get all kinds of good free information.
Very good. Thank you very much.
So much.
All right, folks, thank you. And we'll be back next month. And with our mystery writers, it'll be an all Zoom virtual program, but it's all great mystery writers. Thank you to the Sisters in Crime in Atlanta. God bless, and check our webpage.